Hey guys, before I take you to today's content, I want you guys to take advantage of our Pro Web Legal Services Initiative that we have going on right now in the second quarter of 2024. What is that? Well, it's a website that you get 100% full-blown website with 1 year maintenance, comes with SSL certificate, hosting, etc., all for 50% less than the normal cost. This offer used to be $4,500. We're now giving it to you for $2,250, 100%, no strings attached. All you have to do is go to the show notes right now and click on the link where it says Pro Web Legal, and you'll get all the information. So until then, enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are looking to substantially increase your caseload in the next 6 months, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy, and welcome to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, everyone. I hope you guys are having a rockin' week thus far. Today is one of my favorite segments. As you guys know, it's Meet the Attorney. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a rock star of an attorney only because he not only is a successful law firm, he also teaches people on how to have a successful law firm. I don't want to butcher that up. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the great Kip Bilderback. How's it going, Kip?
Very well. Thank you, Frank. How are you doing today? You sound like you're very energetic. It's always good to hear.
Hey, I'm energetic because I'm speaking to people like yourself who live and breathe law firm and growth. And I just love it. I learn from you guys all the time. So, we talked a little bit about yourself, but in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. Well, I'm kind of an interesting cross section. I'm an attorney by trade. That is my craft. I went to law school in the early 90s and started practicing in the mid 90s and grew with a single law firm, which is really unusual, all the way through my career. But along the way in building our law firm from a very small law firm up to something that I would consider to be small to medium, I learned a whole bunch on what it takes to operate a business using the practice of law as the product or the service. Most of that was by necessity. I also found I really enjoy all of the aspects of running the business. So I also became along the way an entrepreneur, along with my partners who were phenomenal to work with. We had a lot of fun growing the law firm. And now, a couple of years ago, I stepped back from my law practice to take a little break. My kids were going into college. I wanted a little more time with them. And I started seeing my friends come to me and say, hey, Kip, you've got all this experience in running a law firm. How do we do it? What are we seeing? What are we or are we not doing? And I found that I really have enjoyed advising other lawyers on the business aspects of running a law firm. All the different things that you think about that you need to support doing the craft of law, how to sell it, how to manage it, how to assure you're making a profit. And so at this point in time, I'm more of a businessman and business advisor than I am a practitioner of the law, although I've got some 30 years of experience in the actual practice of the craft.
That's fantastic. And that's a perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about today. The topic of today is called law firm operations. Basically, all the things that you did not know, that didn't teach you, in law school. And, because you transitioned into this that I think you're the perfect person to educate us on that. So thanks for bringing this topic because I think it's if I read something online. I'm trying to remember the publication. Something about there's since 2020, there's been a slew of solo practitioners, people leaving their law firms and just going on their own. So this is a great topic. Have you heard that, by the way?
I haven't heard it or seen it in writing, but I understand that, and I think
Mm,
if you look at it, with the advent of a lot of the technological advances, e-filing, email, Zoom meetings, I believe the capital layout to set up a practice is much more approachable than it was before. If you think of 20 years before, you'd have to get an office, get computers, get desks, get someone to type, get copiers, get phone lines, get this, get that. And so you had to make a significant financial investment to go out on your own and hang a shingle, as we call it. Today, you can take your license, you can operate out of your home, at least for a little while, maybe with some kind of office sharing for conference room space. The computer is incredibly powerful. With business software, you can look and be professional without having to have, a stack of parchment letterhead sitting in your closet. You can also e-file. So you take away a lot of the administration problems of taking things down to court, taking things to the recorder. You're actually able to do it online, and you're
mhm.
also able to market via online marketing, which is not something that was available in the past. So I think the barriers to entry for someone who wants to set themselves up as a solo practitioner and grow their firm are much lower. So it does make a great deal of sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's just phenomenal. Now you gave us a little bit about your background and stuff like that, but I'd like to dig deep into that a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And because I like to understand and actually tell the audience how you came into law operations as a passion.
um, well, I think the thing I always hear from attorneys as they're dealing with some of the headaches of their law firm, whether it's employee issues, whether it's trying to deal with the accounting, picking a billing software, is I didn't go to law school for this, because we go to law school and we're taught how to be ethical. We're taught the basics of the practice of law. We're taught enough to get us out to start us learning more in the craft in a law firm, which is what happened to me. I got out in a practice that had real estate and litigation. I learned how to file petitions. I learned how to draft documents, et cetera, and so on. But because of the size of my law firm, I was really fortunate to start seeing immediately how my hours submitted got turned into bills and how that profit then paid the salaries of the non-billable people. I also got to see the effects of, how I operated in making copies. I got to see the effects of the beginnings of use of email. And I found that to be incredibly
Mm,
interesting. I had two things happen. One, I grew, so we ended up adding employees, adding level of complexity, adding different aspects of our marketing, or I'm sorry, of our practice, at the same time that we had technological advances as well as regulatory advances in my particular area of practice. Being in a small practice, you sit around the table and you go, okay, well, you know what? We need to have a file server. Back in the days when you'd have a file server, who's going to do that? And it would be, Kip, you know how to hit reset on a computer. It's your job. And I said, okay, well, whatever. So I called it like my part-time job. I'd bill my 8 hours in a day, and then I'd come back in the evening or spend some time during the day and go, okay, well, we've got to solve this problem. We need to network our office, or we've got to solve this problem. We need a domain server. We've got to solve this problem. We need to use a billing software. What I found was that those problems hit a lot of the same um, points of interest for me as much as drafting a really clean deed or a wonderful contract. So I gravitated towards that and enjoyed doing it. And then as my firm grew, technology increased and regulatory change weighed on us. I just continued to take more of that on and it was something I liked. I have so many colleagues who, when they're faced with the same thing, do you write an opinion letter, or do you draft an agreement, or do you look at your financials, or do you look at billing rates, or do you look at your technological infrastructure? They go, I want to draft a contract. I don't want to do all that other stuff. I found for me, I liked both of them, so I enjoyed doing both of them because they provided problems to solve. And then later on in my career, as I exceeded my level of knowledge by far, I started talking to and interacting with other business owners and entrepreneurs through organizations like Entrepreneurs Organization, and learned that this is a common thing among all business ownership. And I got to see how other people solved it. So when I saw what a person who was in production did, or a person who had a different kind of service handled their business operations as opposed to the product or service they provided, I found that interesting. And that's why I continue to pursue that as part of my career, because those things, if done right, allow you to really do well on providing your craft. You can be a better lawyer if your infrastructure, your process, your procedures, your billing are in line. And I really enjoy seeing the results of that.
That's an interesting story, because the way the way I wrap it around term how to turn being a stuckey into your passion, because you were basically the stuckey, and then you just took it and ran with it, and now it's a passion of you of getting all the operations down. That's wonderful. I like that.
And I was fortunate enough to have two partners who understood and operated the same, and we really supported each other, and I had the room to run with such things, which, some firms don't get it. And if you're spending time worrying about documenting a process or spending time looking at your infrastructure, they go, well, that was an hour you could bill. My partners understood the value of that, and we all supported each other in pursuing those parts of our practice as well.
Yeah, that's true. We talked a little bit about, a lot of people kicking it off and handing their shingle now and starting their own little firm. A big mistake, though, is that I've seen in a lot of businesses, not just the law, is that you basically don't have a process to follow, or or anything really. You just think that, hey, I can just all I need is clients. Mm-hmm. So let's dive into this a little bit. Like, how does process factor into like the craft of practicing law?
I mean, if you look at anything you do, whether it's baking a cake, building a model, creating a podcast, creating the items you create for a law firm, whether it's drafting a petition, creating an estate plan, et cetera, there are steps that are involved in doing that. We learn those, we understand those. And what I find most frequently is that people then don't think about it. Like, I personally don't think about the steps involved in drafting a deed, but there are steps. You need to have a template. You need to have the parties somewhere. You need to have a description of the property. You need to know where your jurisdiction is so that you have the proper execution and recording. So a lot of people say, I know this. And then when they start doing it, they don't think about it. They don't write it down. And then they can't measure it. They can't price it properly. They can't do QC on it. What I use when I'll talk to groups is I'll use a basic litigation file and run through the steps of litigation. File receipt, what's involved in file receipt, engaging the client, drafting the petition, filing, getting service. We all, as attorneys, kind of know this, but by taking what you already know and writing it down, you then unleash a lot of power. One, if you have other people working with you, other attorneys, other paralegals, other legal assistants, you have a framework, a checklist that they can follow, even if it's just on paper. If you are able then to use some of the more powerful case management systems we use, you can create the documents. You can maybe set the time parameters between the documents that you expect. You can look at what the quality is, what your expectations are of those documents. From a pricing standpoint, if you know what's involved, you can determine, am I billing enough per hour? Or if it's in a flat fee environment, what should the flat fee be? And you've got a record of what's going on. You're then able, if you're interacting with a specific client in the initial meeting, to say, hey, this is what this looks like. Let me share this with you. Here's what this looks like. That gives your clients comfort. It gives them expectations that you can then meet or exceed. It helps them understand and make a good choice. And then last but not least, if you know where you are in a process, you know whether or not you've billed and whether or not you've collected, because in the end, with the exception of my colleagues who are in the not-for-profit realm, most attorneys have to be paid to do what they do. We may love what we do, but if we can't put a roof over our head and food on our tables, we can't do it. But by having that process, you understand, what have I done? Have I billed it?
Mm-hmm.
Has that bill been enough? Has that been collected? And it applies not just for the product you're creating, it applies for all sorts of different things as you get bigger. How do you onboard an employee? What kind of training are you providing to your paralegals? What does that look like for you? What's your marketing look like? What really works for you? Your podcast is about marketing, and there's all sorts of different places where an attorney may get clients. Do you need to go more to live meetings? Do you need to have a web presence? What are you doing? Is it a direct mail thing? How do you reach your clients? And when you understand that and you write it down and you memorialize it and you say, okay, well, I know this, and this works. So I need to create a marketing plan. Here's what I need to do. I know what's successful. Here's how I do it. And then if it's successful or not successful, you evaluate it. You can go back to that plan and change it. So every aspect of running a business has some level of process. And while we all have it up here, if you put it down on paper, you're able to see it, you're able to analyze it. It helps you to improve, refine those actions. And that's what I find to be very powerful in any business.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey guys, I hope you guys are enjoying today's content. While I have you on here, I want to introduce you to a promo that we have going on for the spring of 2024 for all legal practices throughout the U.S. I have an outstanding offer that we've never been able to offer before, but we want to do it because you have been an avid listener. We're only promoting this to people who listen to the show. So if you're an attorney and you are an avid listener to the show and you're thinking about possibly opening your own practice, you want to pay attention to this announcement. We are offering a full website with hosting, SSL certificate, online booking service, online appointment management, and more, and much more, with a 1-year maintenance, all for $2,250. That's $2,250 one-time fee, and you have a full-fledged website. If you want to know more about this, just give us a call at 888-416-7752 or send us an email at info@lbmsllc.com. Just make sure that you mentioned that you heard it on the show, and we'll definitely get you that discount. So with that, I'm going to bring you back to the content. Yeah, not only that, I would assume, like, as you hire people, you already have this in place, correct? I mean, so it's not like you just point them to the document or to the video or whatever the process is and say, hey,
and
study that. That's how we do business, right?
And if you look at large corporations, everyone who comes on gets, no matter what it is, if you're a person who's working in the mail office or a person who is, in the executive suite, you're going to go through a certain portion of orientation, which is, this is how we do business. And so if you have that down, you bring someone in, this is how we do business. And then further, for each type of task someone gets, you can go, this is how that task is done. You will be doing this. This is what this looks like. And it does give you the ability to lead someone down. I was fortunate enough to work with a great HR person in my firm, and again with partners who are really mindful of this. And as a tiny firm, we might bring someone in, I might meet with them, someone else might meet with them, we might describe something to them, but by the time I decided to step back a little bit. When we had someone starting, we not only had an orientation that familiarized them with our processes, our policies, who we are, our mission. We had training that was online in a practice format, so you could work in a test environment on the type of materials and in the case management system you would be in. And then even after that, we had regular training. We had at least monthly meetings, if not more frequent meetings, where we would take information we have and share it, not only for the people who are directly on something, but to understand the why, and then also understand the interaction between this person's job and this person's job, which means they had a little more empathy and support for each other. So by knowing all of that and sharing it, you can have much greater effect.
Do you think it's, I mean, because it's a lot what you just mentioned. So do you think it's wise for someone to think about this prior to starting, or basically start and just figure it out as you go and then start implementing that after you start? What's your advice on that?
That's a loaded question, isn't it? So here's the issue. I find that when I look at my career from the point I am right now, you look and you go, my gosh, how did all that stuff get done? How did these teams come up with these incredible ways of doing stuff? How did this happen? And what you figure out is, well, it didn't happen all at once. If you try to go, I'm going to create a whole book of policy and this, and it's going to be awesome, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to fail, right?
100%.
So while I wouldn't say don't think about it before you start, I would say don't think about it too much. Start really, really small on it. If you're thinking about leaving, take a piece of paper and write down, what are the things I need to do? Do I need space? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? What am I practicing in? What are my materials? Do I have forms that I use? Do I have processes I already use? And maybe ahead of opening it. But if you hang your shingle and you go, I'm right there, then as you do stuff, as you understand it, record it. I always tell people, look, the first step is take something you do all the time. I don't know what it may be. Let's say your engagement letter. Everyone uses engagement letters with individual clients. Well, how does that work? And everyone goes, well, I know it works. They decide to hire them, I hand them some engagement, they sign it and blah, 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 and yada, yada, and I take the money. Okay, well, great. Where's that letter from? What does it say? When was the last time you reviewed it? Just write it down. Say, hey, if we get a call in, I talk to the client. I try to set up a meeting. That meeting should happen within 5 days if I can, or immediately. I have this letter. It is saved in folder C, whatever, C client letters that I use. I personalize it to them. Maybe I have an intake form I use. I get all that filled out. We understand in the initial client conference what we're going to do. I have to add that to my engagement letter so that we understand the parameters of the representation. I get them to sign it. I sign it. I know where I put it. I scan it in and save it to the file. I copy it and put it in a hard file. If you do or do not take client retainers, you know how much you're going to take and how that's been expressed and what your escrow or attorney trust account procedures are and how you're going to do that. And then if you have an electronic system, how do you set that client up? What information do you have? It's a page. You can do it on a whiteboard. You can do it on a old school piece of legal paper, but you can write that down. You can type it up, and then you're done. And you put it somewhere, and you look back. Am I doing this? Is this apply? If there's someone new, you go, this is how we do it. And that's just one piece. But if you do that over and over and over and over again, every time you have something, well, let's write this down, then you have a library. I never had policy or process during the first several years because it'd be, how do you know what you do? I said, because it's all right here. I've got two other partners or three other partners. They're brilliant. We're all right here. This is how we know. And someone in a compliance standpoint said, you got to write it down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? He's like, just write it down. And we did. I had a meeting for a couple of days with a client who had a compliance department saying, are you doing what we need to do? And I would go back after all the meetings, and myself and a couple of people would write this stuff down and go, hey, here it is. He's like, great. So all of a sudden we got an employee handbook. We got process documents. We talked about how we save data, where we save data. And it was just about writing it down. And it was this big, and I'm making a very small pinch with my fingers
Mm-hmm.
at start, but 10 years later, it was this big, and we could search it and we could utilize it. And that's really impressive. But it starts with that little bit. So don't be afraid to just try one thing.
That's
Just one.
true. That's true.
It's like, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time,
One bite at a time.
unless you're hungry. I'm just
Like,
joking.
not on the leg, man. Just go for it.
All right. So yeah, I mean, it still seems like a lot of work, and you gave us some insight as to how, how you can get started if that's you. But let me ask you this question: how does, your firm Bilderback Business Advisors will assist a practitioner in this journey? Because that's a lot.
It is a lot. And I think one of the things that I bring to the table is, based on my experience, I can help folks go from a mindset of being overwhelmed to a mindset of, we can get this done. So the first thing I have is I have experience, I have knowledge, I have all this stuff, so that I don't see tasks as daunting, and I can help you get there. Now, what do we do on, like, what is the product? We can start with an analysis and help with some strategic work. So you're talking about someone starting a firm. If someone's starting a firm, I can sit down with them and say, okay, let's call it, Bob's firm. Bob's firm. What are we going to do? And I can help that person in person, through online Zoom meetings, formulate the steps that they need to take to do that. If you have an existing practice, hey, I've got, a solo practice, I'm bringing on partners. How are we going to do? What are we going to work? I can sit down and come up with a pragmatic plan as to bringing people on board, what it's got to look like, and give you accountability touch points. If it's a medium firm wanting to go big, how do we hit that next step? We can sit down and look at what you've already done and find a path forward. Now, I refer to that as strategery. And I specifically call it strategery because I spent so many years of my career going to strategic planning meetings for organizations, for charities, for businesses. And there would always be some guy, and he would be in a really nice cut jeans, a shirt, no tie, and a jacket. And he'd come and go, hey, let's talk about feelings. What are da 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 da? And he'd do all this stuff. And at the end, he'd hand you a manual and said, this is your strategic plan. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Fortunately, one of my partners particularly thought this was an incredible waste of time because you don't walk away with anything. And so we started doing it a little differently. Yes, it is very important to know your core values, your mission, your vision. And if you need help with that, I am happy to help you with that. But equally as importantly is, how do you make the rubber hit the road? Mm-hmm. And that is what a strategic plan should do. You should know what you are going to need to do in the next 30 days, 90 days, a year, looking out really no more than 3 years, even though you may have a BHAG that's much bigger for 10 plus years out. And you have to have an executable plan. Mm-hmm. And then the second piece that I offer is that ongoing accountability. So if you're in a situation where you have used me or someone else to come up with your strategic plan, but you need to measure it and track it. Sometimes it's hard for the practitioner, whether it is a solo practitioner, a small group, or even a big group, to sit back and say, how are we doing? And get called out on what you're doing. There are many organizational operational systems that do this, but sometimes it's good to have that person from the outside come in and talk about it. So if I do strategic work, I actually won't end it at the plan. I will end it with at least 2 or 3 touch points down the road to make sure we validate what's going on and reevaluate to see what happens when that plan is actually put into action. The next thing I do is I like to call it like your senior partner on call type thing. There are people who, particularly solo practitioners, who don't have that colleague or business partner to bump ideas up against, to talk about things, and who need to have that external or close to internal touch to strategize, to talk about how things are going and whatnot. And so that senior partner on call type situation is a service that I offer. I hate to say like fractional CEO or fractional COO, because that doesn't really kind of fit sometimes in the smaller law practice world, but someone who is there on a regular basis to pressure test, to help with things, whether it's creating a model that judges the profitability of particular attorneys, or someone who's looking in and saying, hey, what are you doing in accounting? How are you handling that, and helping you look past that. And I think that's an important thing that I'll mention here. One of the things, particularly as you grow, we ultimately got big enough that we really were able to insource a lot of our services, human resources, accounting, et cetera, and so on. But for practices that are small and growing, I would challenge attorneys to see what is it that you don't want to do or are not good at, and go ahead and hire that out. If you're not big enough to have an HR person, find an HR service. If you're not big enough to have an internal accounting department or retain a firm, find someone who provides maybe back office services. As you get bigger and you want to have some of those looks, maybe there's someone who needs to give you some kind of fractional CFO services. A friend of mine with Anders, John Scott, offers fractional CFO, and I know plenty of people have used him, including my wife, in her own practice, which is really good. So part of what I can do is say, hey, what do you need, and maybe help you find those additional services along the way. And then last, based on my experience, if you're looking at marketing, if you're looking at different areas, we can do one-off projects. So let's say you have a litigation process, you don't know, you've not made it, and say, hey, I want to do it, I can't get started. Mm-hmm. If you're willing, I can help you sit down with the people, or sit down with people who are doing it, document it, put it together, and help you go forward with it. So that hard thing, how do I get there? I can help you break it off into chunks and help you achieve it as you go along.
That's awesome. Awesome. So that's a great service. And I'm assuming this is for all practice areas, right? Not just real estate.
Absolutely. Not only is it for all practice areas, it's all for all lines of business. One of the things that I hesitate to say in the attorney crowd is, look, we're attorneys, but what we provide is a craft, a service, a project, a product. It's a widget. And how you produce that widget, while there's a lot of specialty in it, there's care, there's all this wonderful stuff, it's still a widget. And it aligns with maybe manufacturing or maybe other services, et cetera. So Bilderback Business Advisors serves not only law firms in all areas of practice, but also other businesses in the same arena. And where I find my sweet spot to be is in two different areas. 0 to 50 has a lot of issues that you need to deal with. I'm very comfortable and enjoy that space of helping people to go there. And then 50 to 150 is a second group. That's really good. There are some law firms that are over 150. I think becomes a different skill set. But for businesses and law firms in those spaces, I find that we're really effective in helping them get to the next level.
Now, Bilderback Business Advisors, it's your firm. Is it just you, or do you have a team? How does that work?
At this point, Bilderback Business Advisors is primarily me. I am not in a position yet where I feel like there are people who are going to be able to do it. Now, down the road, who knows? I'm fairly new to it, and I would love to have some people who understand this, because I think there are attorneys who the outlook that we provide, the approach, our mission could really benefit. And so down the road, there may be more, but right now you get 100% personal attention from me. It's my passion, and I like doing it.
That's great. That's great. Kudos to you on that. So this is your second time handing your shingle, right?
It is. It's my second time hanging my shingle. The first time I hung my shingle for about a year, and my partners, one of them at the time I was doing work for, and he said, I'm done with you doing that. Come work for us. And I did that. And then this is my second time hanging my shingle, and I'm having a blast. It's this stage of growth is really exciting. It's exciting to meet new people. It's exciting to, put down things that a lot of people don't think about and then apply them. And I do enjoy this phase of a business very much.
That's awesome. And what's the website where people can go check it out?
It's bilderbackadvisors.com. You'll see all the information. You'll have contact to me, including my email and phone number. And just like when I was practicing law, I will always tell people my phone number is 314-277-9599. My phone is on 24/7. If you have an issue, you have an item, call me. If I don't pick it up, I will call you back in reasonable time, because that's what folks need. When someone has a problem to be solved, they want attention right away.
I love it. I love it. And I will put a link to that in the show notes so you guys can go check out Kip. I think you guys will be very impressed with what he has to offer. Before I let you go, though, is there anything I did not ask you that you think would benefit the audience?
I think what I would recommend to my colleagues is, as you look at your practice, whether you are in a practice, you're going to hang a shingle or whatnot, find what you are passionate about and what you're good at, and focus on that. All the people I've met in business who are really good do what their superpower is, and then surround themselves with talent who have other superpowers. What that means is that you can then, one, work in your superpower, which is the most gratifying and provides the most return. And then two, you're giving other people the opportunity to use their superpowers, be compensated and appreciated. And I think that that's something that we all should lean into. I'm not against trying something new. Find out if you can do it, learn how to do it. But if someone is really good at doing it and you're really good at doing something else, do what you're really good at, and let the people who are good at other things do that with you or for you if you can.
Outstanding advice. Thank you very much for that. Yep. And I agree 100%. That's, that's basically how I grew my firm here. I only do the stuff that I like to do, like producing podcasts like this. So with
Excellent.
that, I am going to put an end to this episode. This has been a wonderful episode. I hope you guys had a lot out of it. Not only that, I hope that if you are thinking about opening your own firm, even before you do it, reach out to Kip, because I know he's going to put you in the right path. So with that, I'm going to put an end to this episode. This has been Frank Deming, the local business guy, and you've just been blessed by the great Kip Bilderback. Until next week, take care.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you would like to know more about the topic we discussed on the show today, reach out to Frank and his team at 888-416-7752 and schedule a discovery call with one of the marketing consultants. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to podcast@lbmsllc.com and we will put you on the schedule. With that being said, until next week, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.